Why do people yawn? You might be sitting there thinking, why am I even watching this? Why would anyone care about why we yawn? Well, if you're like me, you probably often wonder these kinds of things. And you might also find yourself yawning right now while you watch this video too. But more importantly, if you do find yourself wondering, or even just wanting to know more about yawning, then stick around for this video because I think it's pretty interesting. And maybe it will make you feel better if you're redoing something that you really do and want to do. Like maybe you're re-listening to a really boring talk and you coo and help but yawn, or maybe you re-in class and your teacher is so boring you coo and help but let out a huge yawn. Who hasn't been there? We've all had our moments. But hopefully this video can kind of explain some of those reasons why we yawn. But first, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. It really does help us grow. So thank you. Also make sure you stick around until the end of this video because we have another video that I think you like at the end. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Why do people yawn? You might have noticed that you tend to yawn when you're tired. But did you know that there are actually different types of yawns and different times that people yawn? According to a study done by a researcher at the University College London, they found 6 different types of yawns. The tired yawn, the bored yawn, the excited yawn, the stretched yawn, the attentive yawn, and the sympathetic yawn. Each of these 6 types of yawns can occur at different times and in different situations. For example, a tired yawn. I'm sure we're all familiar with this one. We all know that we tend to get tired and then we yawn. But what exactly causes that tiredness? There's still a lot to be discovered about yawning, so not every single thing has been studied and completely understood yet. However, according to research, it is believed that yawns are triggered by adenosine, which is a molecule that builds up in the brain when you're awake. As you wake up, your brain starts using energy and produces adenosine as a waste product. The more awake you are, the more adenosine builds up, and eventually your brain signals your body that it needs rest, causing you to feel tired and leading to a yawn. On the other hand, you might also get a yawn in response to something exciting. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but sometimes our brains need a boost of alertness to trigger a yawn. When you're feeling unmotivated or bored, your brain is less active, leading to less oxygen being used and therefore less carbon dioxide being produced. This means that there's more oxygen and less carbon dioxide in your blood than there should be, which sends signals to your brain to increase the amount of oxygen and decrease the amount of carbon dioxide. Your body does this by taking a deep breath in, increasing the oxygen, and then letting out a huge sigh, decreasing the carbon dioxide. And you guessed it, you just yawned. Now, of course, this isn't the only reason for yawning. In fact, there are quite a few other theories out there. For example, an evolutionary biologist from the University of Utah believes that yawning is a way to increase oxygen intake during both physical exertion and mental fatigue. They tested this theory by measuring participants' heart rates and oxygen levels before and after they completed some physical exercise. What they found was that heart rates increased before a yawn, suggesting that their bodies knew that they were about to receive a sudden increase in oxygen. They also measured the participants' oxygen saturation before and after they exercised, and they found that the participants always had higher oxygen saturation after they yawned. This led them to conclude that yawning may be an adaptive response to physical exertion and mental fatigue. Essentially, whenever your body feels it needs more oxygen, it leads to a yawn. However, that's not the only evolutionary explanation out there. Another researcher from South Australia gave an alternative explanation for why we yawn. They hypothesized that yawns are a form of social communication to support their claim. They observed 73 pairs of strangers interacting with each other and recorded the frequency of their yawns. They found that if one person yawned, the other person was also more likely to yawn. This suggests that yawning could be contagious and used as a form of communication between people. They believe that humans evolved to be more empathetic, which led to contagious yawning. However, this is only a hypothesis, and there is no concrete evidence to prove it. Other researchers have attempted to test this hypothesis, but were unable to replicate these results. Another theory as to why we yawn is because we're just naturally more prone to it. A recent study found that yawning is highly heritable, meaning that if your family members often yawn, then you're likely to yawn a lot too. Now, of course, there's many other reasons and situations where we yawn, but I think you get the idea. Yawning is complex, and scientists still don't fully understand it. Next, let's discuss sleep inertia. Many of you have ever felt groggy after waking up. Yeah, I'm guilty of this. Sometimes it can be so hard to shake off that grogginess, and it takes some time before you can focus on the task at hand. A study found that sleep inertia varies from person to person, depending on the stage of sleep they in when they re-woken up. Basically, if you're woken up during a deep sleep, it'll take longer for you to become alert than if you were woken up during a lighter sleep. And this groggy state is often accompanied by a yawn or multiple yawns. But why do we experience sleep inertia? Well, it's believed that sleep inertia occurs because it takes time for the brain to go from sleep mode to wakefulness. During sleep, our brains slow down their activity and produce less neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that send signals within the brain. When we're woken up, it takes some time for our brains to start producing these neurotransmitters again, which is why we may feel groggy or foggy-headed until those neurotransmitters reach their normal levels. It's almost like our brains are rebooting, and it takes some time to turn everything back on. And what better way to clear your head and reboot than with a nice, refreshing yawn? Now, next, let's look at some interesting facts about yawning. First of all, it turns out that you might yawn in response to someone else yawning. In a study conducted by a university in London, researchers found that participants were more likely to yawn after seeing someone else yawn, regardless of whether or not they were tired. This suggests that yawning can be contagious and spread simply by seeing someone else do it. And who hasn't done that? I'm so tired. Let's see how contagious yawns are. Yawns okay? Did you yawn? Second, it turns out that you might yawn more when you're anxious. Have you ever found yourself yawning excessively before an important presentation or while waiting for an interview to start? If so, you're not alone. Some research suggests that yawning can be a sign of anxiety. One theory is that yawning is a way to self-soothe when we're stressed, while others suggest that yawning helps regulate our breathing and heart rate, which can help calm us down. Or maybe you just can't help but yawn. A third theory states that yawning increases our arousal levels, which is the opposite of what happens when you're anxious, essentially. This means that people could be yawning to help reduce their stress levels, but it also could just be a coincidence, or research needs to be done to investigate this further. And finally, it turns out that yawning might even help improve our memory. In a recent study, researchers found that participants who yawned before completing a memory task were able to remember more information than those who didn't yawn beforehand. The researchers believe that yawning helps improve memory by increasing blood flow to the brain and helping us focus on the task at hand. So why do people yawn? Well, basically, people yawn for a variety of reasons, including to increase blood flow, to regulate our breathing and heart rate, to help with memory, and just simply because sometimes that's all there is to it. Yawning is a natural human behavior that most of us do every day without even realizing it. And it's something that we've been doing since we were babies. Even animals like dogs and cats yawn too. So next time you feel the urge to yawn, don't fight it. Just let it happen. After all, it's just your body's way of saying, I need some air.